Coming up on the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast, how is the Indy Airport weathering the economic storm from the pandemic? HG Ventures continues to look for the next big thing in tech. The race is on to save a piece of Indiana education history. We introduce you to Fire Dogs junk removal. Indiana marks a record year for organ donation. We preview the upcoming Indy fuel season and learn how virtual technology saved a Hoosier comedian's career. Welcome to the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. I'm Andy Ober. As we exit one holiday season and head toward another, the COVID-19 pandemic continues to wreak havoc on the airline industry. Air passenger traffic is expected to be 45% lower in 2020 than it was last year. Indianapolis Airport Authority Executive Director Mario Rodriguez joined Inside Indiana Business host Gary Dick with more on how the Indy Airport is faring.
Give us an idea, Mario. We all know the airport and all airports have been very dramatically impacted by the pandemic. Where are things now in terms of how far have you come back in terms of flights and business?
Well, things are starting to come back slowly, but I caution everybody, slowly is the operative word. We expect to be somewhere between 40 to 45% of 2019 numbers by the end of this year. Right now, during the holiday season, we had a little bit of an uptick, and we're about 50% of what we were in 2019. Now, as you've probably seen, the airlines have cut back routes and cut back capacity, and you could probably expect that for a little while actually for 2021, and everything will start to pick up after that.
Yeah. So perhaps a bit of a consolidation. How about, the airlines I know now are focused on leisure travel. Do you expect business travel to take a hit going forward, to perhaps not be what it once was?
Well, what's interesting, if you start looking at COVID-19, it's been incredibly tragic, and it's put our society on its heels. But step back from it. Business has been affected because business has been able to do things that they did before virtually. So in other words, COVID, what it's done is accelerated where we would have been in the next 5 years, and it accelerated in 5 months. So in other words, if a business traveler could do a virtual meeting rather than get on an airplane, they'll do it. Now, there will be a need for business. That will never stop. But the evolution of the business traveler has already occurred. So it'll be a little bit different going forward. Airlines will have a different type of business traveler, and they'll have a different type of leisure traveler going forward. It'll be a modified reality that we're going to live in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and speaking of leisure travel, the airlines focus there. Accurate to say that travelers can probably find some deals as they're looking to travel for the next number of months?
No. Very, very accurate. And travelers could find some deals right now. There's more capacity in the system than there are passengers. So the airlines are really trying to cut the pricing down. Remember, Gary, a seat is a perishable commodity. So once that aircraft leaves, if a person is not in it, that airline has lost the ability to make money off that seat. So they want to make as much as they possibly can from that seat within reason. So they're trying to fill as many seats. Now, once they dial in on the capacity, I do expect pricing to go up. So just FYI.
Yeah. Certainly for the foreseeable future, the cleanliness, sanitation, if you will, of facilities, be it airports or otherwise, very important. And Indianapolis International recently received a very important accreditation with respect to that. How important is that to the flying public now and to generating more business going forward?
It kind of validates that we're doing a good job on cleanliness. It's the Global Health Accreditation from the Airport Councils International, which is our trade association, but it's also tied to the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is a UN organization. Our incredibly dedicated staff over here, their main focus is to make sure our customers are safe and to elevate the level of customer service. So, the airport is hospital grade clean all the time, and we have an incredibly dedicated staff to make that happen.
the next time folks make it to Indianapolis International? You've not been sitting still there. What can they expect to see different? I know you've had a big concession, tens of millions of dollars in improvements to concessions there and to venues. It's, I don't know if put on hold, but it's certainly been slowed. But yet we've seen Sun King and some others open up at the airport.
Yeah, you could start seeing, and you named it, you could start seeing new restaurants coming up. Sun King is one, which is fantastic. They're an incredible local partner. Harry and Izzy's has reopened. New Starbucks have opened up. So slowly, as passengers come back, passengers will see new concessionaires and modernized concessionaires coming back online.
All right, Mario Rodriguez, the executive director at the airport. Certainly a challenging year, maybe a challenging next year as well, but I know things pointed perhaps in the right direction. Mario, as always, great to see you. Thanks for being on.
Thank you, Gary.
HG Ventures launched in 2018 with the mission of driving innovation and growth across the Heritage Group by investing in private companies and new technologies. 2 years later, HG Ventures has pumped more than $65 million into tech startups. Executive Vice President Kip Frey joined us with an update.
Congratulations on the honors and the accolades, both personally and for the organization.
Well, thanks very much, Gary. It's nice to be back with you again. Great to have accolades, but honestly, I really think it's more about the way this venture community is being recognized from around the world. It's really amazing how the growth in the last few years, actually.
Yeah, certainly the Heritage Group making a big difference with this focus on innovation with HG Ventures, which again, the venture capital arm of the Heritage Group. Give us, for those who may not know, a description of what HG Ventures is all about.
Well, it's a platform to create exponential growth within the Heritage Group family. The Heritage Group has about 38 operating companies. It's one of the oldest private companies in Indiana, and in many different industries, specialty chemicals, construction, environmental services. And the Ventures Group, which I run, it serves to really create an innovation platform that carries forward the entrepreneurial spirit that has really been a part of the Heritage Group for a long time. We make individual venture investments. We run an accelerator here with our partners, Techstars, and we incubate internal companies as startups here at the center in Indianapolis.
Yeah, and you've made a big splash in just 2 years, as mentioned earlier, $65 million in investment, 20 companies, and more on the way. So by the end of the year, you expect those numbers to increase.
Yeah, we should be closer to 90 million in total investments by the end of this year. We've got one large transaction coming up, and we're looking forward to that. So we've gone at a pace that I really am pleased with, and frankly a little bit surprised that we've been able to hit the ground running so quickly.
Well, I'll give you a couple of examples. Ateos is a company, again, an example of the innovation and kind of the cool things going on right here in Indiana and beyond, too.
Yeah, a company that has incredible tiny battery technology. They're able to make flexible, very small batteries. And they came to our accelerator last year and we're one of the companies in the accelerator and liked it so much here, like the Battery Technology Center, moved the company here from California just this year.
Yeah, amazing story there. Plus, Romeo Power Technology is really about to burst on the scene, literally.
Exactly. Romeo is one of our portfolio companies. We invested in it a little bit more than a year ago. They make powertrains for electric vehicles and specifically for large commercial trucks. It's one thing to make a battery for a Prius. It's another thing to make a battery for a truck that needs to haul 10 tons of freight around the country. And they're going to have a great transaction. Hopefully, we announced here in the next month or so. We're planning to do a merger into a public company that will end up with Romeo trading publicly starting around the beginning of the new year.
Yeah, I only have about 20 seconds, Kip, but wanted to get in Megan Glover at 120 Water, a Zionsville-based company doing some great things. And I know you've invested in that company, and it's got a bright future.
Yeah, another fantastic CEO. Megan has done an incredible job, and they're actually doing a lot of COVID-related things as they test water for contaminants, including COVID.
Amazing the innovation going on right here in Indiana, and a big part of that, HG Ventures just launched 2 years ago. Kip Frey, again, congratulations on the accolades, and we look forward to continuing to follow your success.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
In 1846, a group of anti-slavery Quakers and free African Americans established the Union Literary Institute in Randolph County, making it one of the first schools to offer higher-level education to all students, regardless of race or gender. More than 170 years later, the partially collapsed building is an endangered landmark. Around Indiana, reporter Mary Rachel Redmond takes us to Union City to see what's being done to save the historic building.
The first of its kind, where people of color or different race, religion, creed could come to school and get an education.
An institution seemingly light years ahead of its time. Built in 1846 by anti-slavery Quakers and free blacks, the Union Literary Institute was one of the very few racially integrated schools in the country.
People like Levi Coffin and some of the other people around the area that's known for the Underground Railroad, they got together and started something for higher education. It was a manual labor school.
The students were learning algebra, philosophy, grammar.
College courses. You had to work your time out on the farm.
And by as early as the 1850s, the Institute had garnered national attention, even earning high praise from prominent activist and author Frederick Douglass.
And that speaks to how far people travel to attend the Institute. So people would come from Tennessee, North Carolina, and other areas of the South to attend the Institute. It was a high caliber.
And over here you can see like the K.
Faintly scrawled on the nearly 200-year-old wall, you can still see the school's mission statement. Work and win. A lesson that clearly resonated with the nearly 900 students that went through the Institute, several of which went on to achieve great success.
Hiram Revels, the first African-American senator in the United States. And then Amanda Way, she went on to become one of the founding members of the women's suffrage movement in Indiana. It's an example of the female integration of the school as well.
It's amazing to me that you see different books published throughout the United States that talks about the facility. Back in its day, it was a pretty important place.
Today, all that remains of this proud institution is this partially collapsed brick building you see behind me in the middle of a field in Randolph County. But the Union Literary Preservation Society is hoping they can save it.
The march for the stairway that went up the side. The front door was there. It's kind of tough to see. Did you see it at the very peak? That was the blackboard.
It's definitely a structure that is in need of desperate saving. What we want to do is at least stabilize this structure.
There's talk about building up a two-story roof structure over top of this and then having etched glass on the sides that's going to simulate what it was like before.
And then have maybe even a replica built and then have those lessons left to teach for the students within Indiana. And we need a lot more help.
Into the library area this way, or you go into the classroom that way.
Mary Rachel Redmond, Inside Indiana Business.
For nearly a decade, Hoosiers in Indianapolis and Fort Wayne have turned to Fire Dogs junk removal to get rid of items they need to make disappear. 60% of those items end up donated, reused, or recycled. Founder and CEO Bennett Grove II joined us to spotlight the business and talk about expansion plans.
Your story is an interesting one, not only the growth piece, but how you got started. You were in the Air Force, a firefighter in the Air Force, and that really is how Fire Dogs, the name, came about, right?
Yes, sir. I was in the Air Force for 6 years. I was a military firefighter, and when you're in the military as a firefighter, you're called a fire dog. So when I got out of the active duty and I was a civilian firefighter, on my days off, I started Fire Dogs Junk Removal, and we just kept that name with it so we can establish those fire department roots in the company.
Well, you do the work and the jobs that your customers don't want to do. Give us, in a nutshell, your business model and what you provide to customers.
Absolutely. So Fire Dogs Junk Removal, we we like to consider that we do the tough jobs that people could do themselves, the tough, dirty jobs, but they just don't want to. So in our team, we instill a culture of we're tough dogs that get it done. And it can vary from customer to customer. So with junk removal, it could be anything from cleaning out an attic, a basement, it could be a garage clean out, it could be tearing down a shed, an old hot tub. We could haul away heavy furniture. We do charitable donations. So we take things from customers and donate them on the customer's behalf. And then we send the tax receipt back to the customer. And then we also do things like gutter clean outs and those types of services, again, that are things people could probably do themselves. But if they want to get their time back or don't want to deal with the hassle or the dirty work, then that's where the tough dogs at Fire Dogs Junk Removal come in.
Well, you have continued to grow, again, starting in Indianapolis. You expanded into Fort Wayne in your latest market, Bloomington. Talk about that growth, really what's fueling the growth, and you've got plans to add more markets as well.
Yes, sir. So, for us, it's really comes down to our mission statement, which is, our mission statement is to build leaders and pursue growth while providing award-winning service. And so really focusing on building leaders. And so when we bring people into our company, we sit down with them, we talk to them about, if you ever leave the company, we want you to leave a better person than when you came. And so that focus on building leaders and pursuing growth, once we have those leaders, we have to give them a place to grow into. We have to give them opportunities. So part of pursuing growth is the growth of the company and our sales. But it also comes down to, we want our team members to grow, intrinsically. We want them to introspectively. So we want them to grow as people. They want them to learn new skills. And once they do that, the award-winning service will come. And so once we have those leaders in place, we want to give them outlets and opportunities to help us grow the business. And so that's kind of what's fueled our expansion project. So, For example, in Fort Wayne, the guy that's leading that operation had been with the company for 3 years. And then our team member leading the Bloomington operation was with our company for 2 years and came through our training system. And so that's that outlet for growth. And that's what we plan to do in the state as well.
Now you have big plans to grow in all parts of the state. Up next, Muncie and Lafayette. Bennett Grove, the second, the founder, owner, Fire Dogs Junk Removal. Bennett, congratulations on the success. We look forward to following your growth.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I appreciate your time.
Remember, you can catch Inside Indiana Business Television on stations throughout the state every weekend. Head to InsideIndianaBusiness.com to check listings. Despite a complicated year thanks to the pandemic, a record number of Hoosier organ donors have given the gift of life through the Indiana Donor Network, with a month left in the year. The organization is on pace to facilitate 28% more organ transplants in 2020 than last year. Chief Executive Officer Kelly Hanner spoke with Kylie Valletta in the Business of Health.
Well, the Indiana Donor Network is calling 2020 a historic year for saving lives. What are some of the numbers that your organization is proud of that you'd like to share?
Well, we are really proud to say that as of today, 232 Hoosiers have given the gift of life through organ donation. That's resulted in 784 life-saving organ transplants so far in 2020. So we are on pace to increase organs transplanted by about 31% this year over last year.
Those numbers really are remarkable considering the challenging year that it's been in the medical industry throughout 2020. How was your organization able to respond when the COVID-19 pandemic hit so unexpectedly? What did you do to persist?
Well, it was certainly challenging, but early on we partnered with the Indiana State Department of Health to test all of our potential donors for COVID-19. And then, of course, patients who tested positive couldn't become organ donors because of health risks to the transplant recipients. But we also adapted our staffing guidelines to reduce our team's exposure to COVID-19. We started working and communicating with families virtually of potential organ donors. Prior to the pandemic, though, most family contact had been in person. So we had to just kind of change a little bit on the fly.
I imagine those conversations on devices had to be difficult. Those are really sensitive topics, and having to do those on devices, was that a hard transition to do?
Yeah, it certainly is more difficult. It's hard to sometimes make a connection with a family, but I think that, we're very fortunate that we have so many Hoosiers in Indiana that are really willing to give the gift of life to others in their time of need, and to think about others when they're going through something quite terrible for themselves.
Well, another big accomplishment in 2020, your organization opened the Organ and Tissue Recovery Center in Indianapolis in May. Explain what that is and some of the advantages it gives you.
Sure. The Indiana Donor Network Organ and Tissue Recovery Center, it's our state-of-the-art facility that allows us to transport donors to Indiana Donor Network for on-site organ and tissue recovery. It includes an intensive care unit, 2 surgical recovery suites, and that enables us to provide the best possible care for our organ and tissue donors.
And typically that all had to be done at the hospital, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It does. And we do still do some recoveries at the hospital, but our recovery center here allows us to save more lives. It reduces our travel time for transplant teams, minimizes preservation time for the organs. It also creates a more positive experience for donor families. They don't spend as much time waiting at the hospital, waiting for the patient to go to the operating room. And it certainly also decreases healthcare costs. Costs typically are paid by the transplant community, and that includes private health insurance and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. So those costs get reduced by moving them to our facility.
Okay, we talked about your swift response after COVID-19, but you also had some new strategies in place even before the pandemic hit that you think has helped during 2020. Can you tell us about those?
Right. We are working very closely with our hospital partners to increase our donor referral rates. For example, in 2020, our hospital services team tripled in size, and they made quite a big, significant changes in an effort to improve the donation process for our clinical partners. We've also been coordinating more cases of donation after cardiac death. We increased our age range to allow people up to age 85 years old to become donors. And then we're also going on site into the hospitals much more frequently than before to evaluate patients to be potential donors.
And could you explain how Indiana really is unique as far as the growth in the transplants in 2020, especially when you compare it to other states, right?
Well, certainly, yes. I think everyone has continued to grow a little bit this year, but growing by 30%, 31% in 1 year is just absolutely astounding. Fortunately for us, we have, the generosity of Hoosiers who've signed up to be donors. But despite our record-setting year, there's still more than 100,000 people waiting nationally for a life-saving organ transplant, and more than 1,300 here in Indiana alone. So one thing that we always want to make sure that we share with people is to register themselves to be donors. You can do that at the BMB or on indianadonornetwork.org on our website. So.
Okay, just a few seconds left, but we're in the thick of another COVID-19 surge here in Indiana. Do you feel more confident going into this now from lessons learned earlier in the pandemic?
Certainly. I think hopefully, this pandemic isn't going to continue for much longer, and that hopefully this little spike that we're having is going to go back down. But we've certainly learned a lot over the last, 8, 9, 10 months or so. And, we just want to encourage people to continue to give and share life with others.
All right, Kelly. Well, a successful year, and I know it's sacred work you do there. Thanks for being on the show and sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
2 programs at Indiana University East are providing health and wellness opportunities for Indiana schools, as well as business possibilities that are having a global impact. The BOSS program and Billionaire Project are both gaining traction. Professor Tim Scales and student Carter Cook have details in our Eye on Education segment.
Tim, I want to start with you. You've had a number of innovative programs that you've had a hand in, certainly, and led there at IU East over the years. Let's start with the Billionaire Project and how that came about. Hand washing, kind of a health initiative, if you will. It's really grown into a lot more.
Sure. Thank you for asking about it. And what happens is a few years ago, myself, a nursing student, and a nursing instructor took on a project that we took the glitter bugs to the Boys and Girls Club here in Wayne County. Just as a health and wellness, we wanted to demonstrate the importance of washing your hands. And at the time, that's what our focus was. And after that training, we left the units with the Boys and Girls Club and let them continue to do so.
Yeah, and I know, Carter, you are a freshman there at IU East from Fort Wayne, and you really take, from the student side of things, you really took a leadership role or have taken a leadership role in the project. Talk about the project and how you have really helped to fuel growth.
Yeah, correct. So I told Tim, coming out of high school, I told him, getting to college, I really wanted to work with him on some projects that would, provide me like the leadership opportunities. I feel like I'm gifted with that ability. And so he presented me with this idea and said, hey, it's a perfect time now. And it's just very fitting to do a project that can teach people the importance of hand washing, the spreading of germs, and essentially, especially in the younger schools. So we wanted to take this project with a driving force while the time was right. And, we decided to buy these units.
Well, talk about how it works. We've seen some video on the screen. I know Tim has a unit as well. But talk about how it works as you get into these schools and how it really gets kids understanding the whole importance of hand washing.
Right. So, Tim, if you don't mind showing on the screen right now, he's going to show one of the billionaires itself. So, as you can see, that's how it looks face up. Usually it'll be sideways if Tim doesn't mind moving it sideways, kind of. So the students will put a lotion on their hands, and they will then put that around inside the machine. And that blue light in the back there, as you can see that it's kind of on, will show those germs on their hands, and the students will be able to learn and see how those germs are just sitting there on their hands even after washing their hands properly as they think.
And this has expanded. The program has expanded throughout the county in that area.
That's correct, yes. Every school now in Wayne County, every elementary school now has one.
All right. And Tim, the next phase, if you will, of the program, the Billionaire Program, going to extend to high schools in a little different kind of scenario.
That is correct. And so what we have is for the high school students, we're really going to understand the economic impact, and we're going to show them how the germs truly spread. We've got an invisible powder. We can put that on like a sign-up sheet. We can have the students come in and sign up. They don't even know about the powder. It then gets on their hands, and they go about their business for the next 20, 30 minutes. We then turn the lights off, turn on a black light, and we can see how those germs have spread. They're on people's masks, they're on different tables, they're on their clothing. It's all over the place. And we can actually see that's what's happened. And the reason that's important to us is because of why we call it the Billionaire. And I'll let Carter explain that, if I may.
Yeah,
right. So the Billionaire is actually called the Billionaire because in America, in a non-COVID year, so this is just a regular year with no pandemic or anything, we spend about $40 billion on the common cold, which estimates to about $130 per person. And we think that number we can truly get billions of dollars cut down from that spending just by teaching the importance of hand washing and how quickly germs can truly spread through the Billionaire Project.
Yeah, big numbers and a big business opportunity indeed. Tim, before we go, I want to talk about the BOSS program. We've talked about it on the show before. You launched that, I think, in 2007, if I remember correctly. Business opportunities for self-starters. It's really about giving high school students the ability or the understanding to create some great business plans, right?
That is correct. They learn how to write the business plan. They present the business plan, and several of them have actually opened businesses from that.
Yeah. And again, I mentioned this earlier, but the success of the program has been recognized, just recently received an award, and has extended far beyond Indiana to a number of places around the globe.
We have had it in several countries now. We've had it in several of the states. And I'm really proud of the fact that the Kelly School there at IUPUI is helping us get it into all of the Indianapolis public schools in the year 2021.
Final word to you, Tim. The Billionaire Program, the BOSS program, you put a lot of effort in really connecting students to real world opportunities. Do you sense that's been paying off over the years?
Absolutely, and it was the ultimate investment for me because that's what I do every day, long days, is work with students and try to just teach and develop. They learn, they teach and develop me as well. So it's been a great partnership.
All right, Tim Scales, a professor at Indiana University East. Great programs, the Billionaire Project and the BOSS program. And Carter Cook, a freshman there. Carter, I know we'll be seeing a lot more of you with your entrepreneurial exploits. I think you have a great future ahead of you. Thanks for joining us, both of you.
That's the plan. Thanks, Gary.
Coming off of a shortened season due to the pandemic, the Indy Fuel returned to action this month. Indianapolis's minor league hockey team is slated for a 72-game schedule. Fuel President Larry McWeary previewed the season and talked about dealing with COVID-19 with Bill Benner on Inside Indiana Sports.
We're pleased to have you on, and we're pleased to be looking forward to the start of the season. Of course, the Fuel, like so many other sports enterprises, had to shut down last March, and so I'm sure that you and your owner, Mr. Hallett, and everybody is eager to get it going again.
It's been a long off season. Yeah, it's been we're typically playing by October. Now we're ready. We're itching to go.
Well, Larry, talk about again the split season format. Some of the 20-some member ECHL teams are coming back when you guys are here in a couple of weeks. Others are opting out until perhaps January, and some may not come back at all. So explain the thinking that went into that.
Yeah, it's because we're international, not just here. We have 2 teams in Canada, and so it's based on jurisdictions, the restrictions you have, things along those lines. And so we had to make a decision, each team, what was best for you and for your organization. We had 3 choices. One was what we call temporary pandemic suspension, means you take a year off completely. We definitely didn't want that, but 8 of our teams have already chosen that because, like Canada, it's just not realistic for them to play, as an example. And then 13 teams, including ourselves, have chose what we call Window 1, which means starting December 11th and playing a complete full season, with the remaining teams having a couple weeks here still to decide, and they would start mid-January roughly and play a partial season.
Talk about some of the safety protocols. Again, you will have some fans at Farmers Coliseum. It certainly won't be a full house, but you will have some fans. Talk about some of the protocols that you will undertake.
Yeah, it's the same type of protocols you hear at other places such as Lucas Oil Stadium and such, but obviously social distancing is very important. So when you're sitting, it'll be the pod concept that I'm sure many of the folks have heard about already, but you'll be sitting in pods, that, whether it be family or friends or people you have been around and comfortable with. And there'll be no one next to you, no one within 6 feet. No one will have to walk over you at all. So wherever your seats are, you won't have that. And you also have no one directly in front of you. So it's definitely going to be spaced out. And of course, masks are going to be required, and, hand sanitizing stations everywhere. And we've taken every protocol you can possibly think of.
For those who have been to Fuel games, it's a great atmosphere. I mean, the hockey is great, but it's a great atmosphere as well. And I know your owner, Jim Hallett, wants to make sure that no matter how many people are at the Farmers Coliseum, it still has a really electric kind of feel.
Oh, yeah. That was actually, this year, it's just, we had to, as you mentioned, we shortened our season last year by 5 home games. And, you got to take into account costs and things like that. But Jim pointed out to me, he goes, at no point are we going to cut the cost for our fans, whether it be a Wednesday night, Sunday, Friday, Saturday, whatever. We're still going to go full boat. We're going to have the flames. We're going to have the fireworks. We're going to have everything. We are not cutting any of that, because whether it could be some kid's first game, but we want to make it memorable to them.
Larry, talk about what you're doing for your players and your teams. You have to travel, and you mentioned international travel, but that's got to be a hurdle as well.
Yeah, the travel. I mean, our biggest concern, to be honest, is the buses. They can, even when our players are on the buses, they're going to have to wear masks, and you'll find this kind of interesting and kind of funny in a way. But they're actually practicing sleeping with masks so they can kind of get used to that if they're sleeping on the bus. But we're going to be testing them twice a week. That's across the league, Monday and Thursdays, and we are going to. They're basically going to live in a bubble, per se. We have requirements for our players. They can't go out to bars. They can only go to restaurants that have been approved by us. And it's not just the players. It's everyone in hockey ops. So it includes coaches, athletic trainers, equipment managers. So it's going to be a year like no other. But we've made a commitment. If we're going to start, we're going to finish. So we got everybody on board.
Larry, as we wrap up, and of course the Fuel, an affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks, is just briefly, if people want to come to a game, how do they go about it?
Hey, go to IndyFuelHockey.com. Right now, we only have ticket packages on sale because, again, capacity is a little bit limited. But as far as if we still have seats available, we'll put them on single game probably the 1st of December. And one thing I do want to mention, you mentioned we're an affiliate of the Blackhawks. With the Blackhawks starting later and the AHL starting later, there's a good chance that you'll see some really, really, the talent will be like we haven't seen here before. So you could see some NHL. You'll see more NHL, AHL players here than before because they're going to want good practice time before they might begin their season.
Well, Larry McQuarrie, the president and CEO of the Indy Fuel, we're excited about hockey returning to Farmers Coliseum. We wish you the best. Have a successful season.
Well, thank you, Bill. We want you to come out and all of your listeners.
And finally this week, COVID-19 has not made it easy for entertainers like comedian Scott Long to sustain their careers. The Indianapolis comic was building major momentum before the pandemic hit and forced him to retool. Long joined us to talk about how going virtual has saved his career.
Scott, welcome to the program, as always.
Thanks for having me on. It seems so strange. This is a great example of it's more fun in many ways to be sitting next to you having this conversation, but there's ways you can tweak it. I'm sure from the first episode that you guys did like this to now, the shows are getting better and better. And that's been my experience with Zoom. Now I love doing them.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to March because you and I mentioned that your career, and you've been doing this for a long time, was really kind of peaking, really. And then the pandemic hit. Go back to March and what things were like.
Yeah, well, I had the 2 podcasts. I had won this award last winter. And then on top of it, I have this comedy special, TV special coming out in the summer of this 2020. So I thought, everything's good. My calendar is full. And then within about a month, everything was gone. And it's daunting. And had to kind of tool things. So I had people ask me, can you do a virtual event? I do a lot of corporate events. I don't think this would ever work at a comedy club or anything, but doing a virtual event for corporations, I'm like, okay. So I figure you need to have a conversation like this, but you need to be prepared. So I would write like crazy. Like I'd ask all these questions about how the company had done and what was going on with the company and their competitors. And then I basically crafted a show for that company. All their employees are watching and they all felt connected to it. And that's the great thing that I'm looking for right now. When I do a comedy show now, there's 2 things I will not discuss. Politics, that does not bring anybody together.
Yep.
And anyone who lost weight during the COVID-19. I have no time for any of you either. 10 people. So I want to bring people together. So that's kind of what's been going on. And laughter does that. And so that's been really the exciting part. And I've learned how to do this to the point where, I don't know, I'm putting in my resume for the Indiana Business when you take a week vacation. That's how things are going.
I'll take a good close look at that one. Hey, but it's fascinating. So you've really retooled and kind of reinvented yourself, and it's forced others, I assume, in the entertainment business to do the same thing. And that can be a very daunting challenge.
I would say most comedians have not. They've just kind of stayed in their house. Maybe they've been fortunate enough that they don't have a wife and 3 hungry children and a crop in the field, as I like to say. So I had to do something. And I knew I was good at this, kind of just having a conversation part of it. So you cannot have a brick wall and a microphone, stand in front of it and just recite your act. It doesn't work. There's very few of us comedians who have had success in virtual. And that's because you have to really redo things. It's not like when you're at Crackers or at the Helium Comedy Club.
Yeah. You only have about 30 seconds, Scott, but is virtual here to stay in the comedy world? Do you sense things will get back at some point, get back to normal?
I think it's going to take a while for people to trust themselves. I think people will trust themselves at a corporate event because they're around their fellow employees. Lawyers trust lawyers. Well, maybe not. It's not the best example, but everybody else trusts everybody. And so what I found is people have been coming to scottcomedy.com and checking things out and figuring out a way to do their virtual event, be it holiday or award shows.
All right. Scott Long, I really appreciate you taking the time. We look forward to following you. You're a funny guy and a good guy. Do a lot of great stuff in the community, too. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
That wraps up this week's Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. Remember, you can find all of this week's TV segments, as well as the top business news from throughout the state at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. While you're there, you can also subscribe to our platform of free e-newsletters. This is Andy Ober for Inside Indiana Business.